Hey there everybody, this is SDoom and welcome to my first lesson of my animation school. Basically, this lesson is just going to be going over how to set everything up in Maya. It will be going over the various programs that we'll be using, like Brawlbox and of course the aforementioned Maya. And it's basically just to ease everybody into stuff before we get into the real nitty-gritty of learning how to animate. So the overall goal of this series of lessons or this school is basically to get you all to grips with animating for Brawl and Project M, so that you guys can just understand well all the fundamentals and principles of animating. So without further ado, let's begin. Alright. So I have a folder here. I'll have a link to said folder in the description of the YouTube video. It will contain a download for that has all the programs as well as the characters, models, and animation files. So in here I have all the costume files, the default costume files for all the characters in Brawl, and all their animation files as well. Next up we have the programs. I have two versions of Brawlbox in here. 0.64D is basically for animation cleanup. It's what I used a lot when I was animating in Brawlbox, and it's kind of still needed for a small handful of the characters, since they can't really be brought into Maya very well. While 0.71, this is a slightly newer version. Well, I say slightly, it's like a couple years newer, but it's still not the most recent version. It's my preferred version, and basically what it is this is the version required to import animations and import and export models as well. I also have this text document containing the links to the student version of Maya and the Autodesk FBX converter. I'll get to this one in a second. With regards to Maya, you basically just have to go to the site and download it from there. It's very self-explanatory. Alright, so first things first, I'll show you guys around Brawlbox. I'll show you the process of exporting the model into Maya. And yeah. So, let's go into the character models. I think I'll choose Ganondorf, because he's a pretty nice example. You know, pretty humanoid. Right, so we've loaded him up here. We've got his model data here, which basically shows us where his model is. Texture data, which shows us his textures. Again, self-explanatory. We've got his main body texture, his this one's for like the shiny parts of his gold, stuff like that. And then this second model folder is for his shadow. This isn't really, you don't have to worry about this. You can pretty much just leave it there. So let's preview the model real quick. Nice full screen. Alright, so navigating through Brawlbox is pretty simple. You use right click to move around through the workspace. Holding control allows you to turn more sharply. Pretty much a more a wider sense of a rotate, whilst just right clicking just gives you a sort of slide. And then you use your middle mouse wheel to zoom in and out. Alright, so now we want to open up these tabs, and these will show us all the info that we need to know. On the right here we have all of the bones for Ganondorf's rig or his skeleton. The top end bone is the central bone that controls everything. Most of the time you don't really want to fiddle with that. Trans end bone fiddles with movement. Basically, for moves such as like running or dash attacks, we'll always use movement from the trans end bone. Occasionally as well, we can use movement from movement parameters, movement events in PSA, which is for move set editing, but we don't have to worry about that for the sake of what we're doing here. Hip N is the central, like the center of all the skeleton is where all the other bones come off of, and then you have stuff like the legs. Mant for Ganondorf is his cape. Most of it is self-explanatory. Some of it is kind of weird in terms of their naming convention. But yeah. For the most part, it's pretty self-explanatory. On the right here, we have the loader which loads the animations up. We have the objects, so all of your character's objects. Every character has like a different number of them. So if we uncheck these, certain parts of the character will disappear. I'll uncheck 6 and 7, I believe it is. No, not 6. 7 and 8. Yeah, there we go. Those are his final smash eyes, because every character has like a different set of objects for their final smash eyes when their eyes glow yellow. And here we have textures. As you can see here, like some of his textures look a bit weird. Like here it's all black, his eyes are kind of darkened out weirdly. And that's because certain textures that would normally be kind of transparent in Brawl just show up as solid here. So we'll uncheck the gold one. As we can see, that kind of lowered it out. We'll uncheck the mask. So that made all those. And we'll uncheck his eye shadow so that we can just see him. So now he looks pretty much how he looks in game. Now to load up his animations. So we want the Ganon. And as we can see here, we've got a list of all of his animations here. There's approximately 300 or so for every character. So there is a lot of animations. So here is like his main idol. Check this little box here to have it loop. Second one that he occasionally goes into along with his third. This is idle if he's holding an item. And then, you know, you've got jumping, walking, falling, crouching, and then attacks, specials, final smash, throws, item stuff, entering, his taunts, victory and loss, and then ladder climbing. Different versions of Brawlbox display these textures differently for what it's worth. So unchecking different ones, don't be surprised if you have to uncheck different ones depending on the version of Brawlbox. I guess the final thing to look up is the stuff here. So we obviously have a file, which to be honest you don't really need to fiddle with. Options, you can take screenshots with this version of Brawlbox, so you can take it with or without the background. You can also create 60 FPS animated GIFs. That's how I often create Giphy cats of my animations. If I'm not doing it directly from Maya, I'm using Brawlbox to just create the animated GIF. Very handy. You can also adjust stuff in the environment. Again, this isn't too much of a big deal. If you want to, for some reason, render with Brawlbox, you can kind of do that. And to be honest, a lot of this you don't really need to fiddle with. It's just the main things that I went over that are the important things. Alright. So now with regards to exporting the model. First, what we want to do, right click, export, or just press Ctrl E. We'll want to save it as a DAE. This is important because this is a kind of model format that reads in the actual computer animation softwares, computer graphic softwares. So we'll just export it as FitGanon00. We also want to export some of the textures. We don't need to export all of them. We just need to export the ones that we'll mainly be seeing in Brawlbox. Maya, sorry. The main ones will be the body. Actually, I'll keep this all in a different folder. Let's make a lesson 1 folder. We don't want the gold. His iris. Don't want the eyeshadow. We want his eye white, even though his eyes clearly aren't white. That is very much brown. We want his face, hand, and his mant, which is his cape. So those are textures for Ganon that we want. And I think for now we'll close Brawlbox. Alright. So now that we've exported Ganondorf's model, we want to now convert that DAE into an FBX file. FBX files basically are read better in Maya. So we'll go to our FBX converter, as it's not in my folder that I've included for you guys. As I said before, I have the link to download it. Go add. It's very, very simple. This is stuff from my stream. And it is not here because I'm silly and because I exported it. Where did I export it to? I exported it to here. Okay. Let me move this real quick. Alright. Open this up. And all we need to do is press convert, and it's literally that simple. So now we've converted the .dae file to a .fbx, and now we can actually work with it in Maya. Alright, so let's open up the Maya 2014. I forgot to mention that you want to download version 2014. That's the version that we always work with. It'll take me a while. My computer's not the fastest thing in the world. I apologize. Come on, Maya. You're usually a bit better than this. It's being super slow. Maybe it's just because of my CPU. Alright, so here we go. Alright, so you may or may not see what's in the viewport at the moment. I'm not sure if it's a white square at the moment. It is in OBS, but since I'm using XSplit at the moment, it might just be normal. But for the sake of future reference, we want to go to viewport 2.0, since this is the, to be honest, it's like the least intensive, and it's just, I think it's the best renderer personally. So we have our empty Maya scene. And at first it's a pretty daunting interface at first, but you steadily get used to the main things. Hopefully I'll help you guys to navigate it a bit better. Unlike Brawlbox, a lot of the navigation is done through the left click instead of the right. Alt left click allows you to rotate like this. Middle mouse zooms in, as well as Alt right click. Alt middle click allows you to scroll. And those are the main ways to move around. Alright, so from here we want to go to File, Import. We don't need to check the box, we just press Import. We'll go to the FBX that we got. Take a little bit. And there we go. So we see the wireframe of Ganondorf at the moment. You can either go to this little button here, which allows you to see him solid, or you can just press 5 on your keyboard. If we press 6, we can see him with his textures. So as you can see, some of them are grayed out, and that's because primarily what they're trying to load is the golden ones from before. But we can change that. I'll change that in a second. What we also want to do is click this little button here, the X-ray joints, and that allows us to see the bones inside. Alright, so in order for us to animate it in Maya, we technically could animate it like this, but it would be very, very long and very, very tedious. So in order for us to animate it in a more efficient way in Maya, we want to create a HumanIK rig. And the reason why I was saying before that this doesn't really work well with every character is because this works best with characters that have kind of humanoid structures, and some characters like Kirby or Rob don't work well with this at all because they obviously don't have humanoid structures. So we go up to skeleton. This is with this animation tab here. There's a bunch of these, but we only want to focus on animation. Skeleton, HumanIK. It'll come up on the side next to the attribute and editor and the control channel box and layer editor. And we want to go to define skeleton. And from here, it's basically just a case of matching the bones on here to the controls on here. It's all very simple. It doesn't take very long, and it's the quickest way to just rig up our character. If we go here, we can also see different viewports. This is the solo perspective view. This one allows us to see 3 orthographics along with the perspective. So we can see, didn't want that, top, front, and right hand side views. I'll just stick with the perspective for now. From here we can see the perspective along with the outliner. I personally find this very useful. I use this all the time. A lot of other people, they like to go into window, outliner, and have the outliner in a separate window. It's all down to your own preference, but the outliner is basically shows us what's in here in text format. Right, so this is the skeleton that we saw from before. It's all nicely organized now. It's a lot more easier to see what is parented to what. And now we can start rigging up. So we'll start with the hips. Or actually no, we can start with this reference bone. I like to reference it on the transcend bone. So we just right click, assign selected bone. And it's very simple. We just do this for the rest of everything. Assign the hips. I like to then go to the legs. You can also click on the bones in here if you don't want to click on them in the outliner. Assign. Click on your bone first, and then click on the control here, and assign. Right foot, left foot. Now to see the toes, we want to click on the 2 feet view. And since characters in Smash have very simplified toe rigs, they just literally, most of them only have 1 toe. What you can do is just literally we only want the base bones. So we'll just click on the left bone, right click, assign, right. Also, I forgot to mention, in order to open this out quickly, you can do, if you shift left click, it opens up the entire bone tree. Otherwise, normally it just does the bones one by one. So that's a handy tip for just opening up everything nice and quickly. Alright. Now for the waist, we want the main, we want spine. And for the bust, which is the upper body, we actually want spine 1. Don't want any of these ones, we don't have to worry about any of them, since we only have 2 main body bones. And now we have the arms and the shoulders. So we want the shoulder view. We want, where is it? R shoulder N. Oh no, wait, that's the left shoulder, so we want L shoulder N. Now, every character in the game, I believe, has shoulder N bones and shoulder J bones. The shoulder N bone is basically like pretty much where your scapula are. So the bones like right near the base of your back, like just below your neck. And the J bones are where your where the shoulder ball joint connects. I believe every character has these. Well, every character with like reasonable arms has these, except for Sonic. For some reason, he only has shoulder J bones. I'm not quite sure why, but yeah, Sonic's rig is a little odd. So we just reassign the rest of the bones. Alright, now to the hands. Unlike the toes, characters in Brawl do have slightly more, well, not really complex hand rigs. They're not complex at all. In fact, they're very simplified. They only have 2 bones in each digit, so you don't really have to worry too much. I quite like selecting the bones from the outliner for the hands. It's a lot easier since this is all really zoomed out. So it's just a case of assigning everything. It's a kind of a tedious process, but it's not too long, thankfully. And it's very simple. Once you've done it once, you've done it 1,000 times. Pretty much every character is done the same way. There are a couple of minor exceptions, but yeah. I mean, if you can't use a HumanIK rig, chances are you'll need to create your own control rig, and that takes a long time. I have the utmost respect for riggers for this very reason. I personally am not a particularly good character rigger. My specialty is very much in animation. Alright, cool. And then the last things we need to do are the neck and the head. The neck we just assign to here. This base neck bone, we don't have to worry about any of these. And then the head, finally, we just assign to this. Alright, we're in the green. When it's green like this, that basically means that everything's okay to go, everything's fine. Occasionally it will be a yellow triangle, which means it should still be okay, but there may be some oddities. But yeah, so now we just click from the source of none to control rig. And as we can see, most of the bones have now been replaced with controls. What the HumanIK rig gives is both simple IK and FK controls. IK and FK, for those who don't know, they stand for inverse kinematics and forward kinematics respectively. And what those are basically how you go about controlling your rig. Inverse kinematics is when the movement of the child bone basically influences the movement of the parent bone. So me moving around the hand here controls what the entire arm does, causing it to bend and move and stuff. Forward kinematics is the opposite. Parents dictate the child. So me rotating the arm joint here moves the hand. And then I control the entire FK arm with the shoulder. Alright? So you can have a little play around with this, basically just moving around everything. So you can move his leg up. Oh, don't want that. Move his leg up here. Rotate it around. And every control works a little differently, but a lot of it is just kind of down to common sense, like how an actual body would work. Yeah. Alright. So quickly going back to the textures of the model here. As I said before, the initial mapping to these textures was actually to the gold textures as opposed to the the normal textures that we want. So what we want to do is we want to select this. Thankfully it's all one object, which makes life a lot more convenient. We want to go to the attribute editor, go to the side, click on the texture, which is the fit Ganon 00 armor in this case. Often it's called like a Fong or something like that. As we can see by this little warning message, it says the gold mask.png doesn't exist, and that's because we didn't export that, because obviously we didn't want to. So what we have to do is load up a different texture instead. If we go to this little box here, click this, and open this up here, we can then select which texture we want to use. As we exported the body texture before, we will use this. And there we go. Ganon in all his mighty Twilight Princess glory. Fully textured and looking nice. Only blank thing are his eyes, but they don't really matter. I can delete these eye polygons actually. But yeah. Cool. Because those were for the Final Smash eyes. Alrighty. So now that we've got our rig into Maya, what we want to do from here is set up our scene so that we can properly animate for Brawl. Currently, by default, Maya sets your time frame to 24 frames per second. We can edit this by going into the little settings here, just by clicking this little window. That opens up a separate window for your preferences. We go to settings, time, 60 frames per second. That should be good. We'll change this to 1. And now our timeline has changed to 60. In addition to this, we can also change the size of our bones, like the cape bones here. If we go to kinematics, we can change their joint size. I quite like them at quite small, no larger than like 0.3. I have it at 0.25, that's quite a nice number. We don't really have to worry about these. These, for some reason, don't actually change anything with regards to HumanIK, so that's fine. And from here we can play around with him. Now, in terms of Smash Bros, one of the key ways to animate for Smash Bros, since everything is done in loops and they all go, pretty much all start from some kind of idle animation and end in some kind of idle animation, we want to import our idle into Maya and then pose Ganon around, or pose whatever character around that idle. Now you may have asked before, why don't we just import Ganon in the idle pose straight away? Well, we can't do this because we need Ganon to have all of his default rotations, otherwise you can't animate him properly, because then exporting him will cause really weird stuff to happen and you don't want that. So we have to build him as a T. We have to import him as a T pose, and then go from there. Yeah. So what we can do from here, we'll go back to Brawlbox. Minimize this. Open up Ganon again. Load his animation file. Make this a bit bigger. Click on his weight one. Copy under the transform all. Go to frame 0, which is T-pose, and paste it here. So now his T-pose rotations have become his idle 1 rotations. So I'm going to export this as DAE. Fit Ganon weight. Nope, don't want to save the changes. Go back to our FBX converter. You can also drag and drop into here. I always, pretty much for everything, I don't really drag and drop much. That's just me. And I'm silly. I actually didn't export it as DAE. I exported it as an MDLO, which is not useful. So let me do that all again. Well, actually, no, I don't need to do all of it. I can just open the MDLO we have here. Wait. There we go. Now we have the DAE. Convert. And I'll save this real quick. Oop. We'll call it Ganon T-pose. I like to save my files as MAs. They're just a more stable file format. So let me just show you guys again. You have two file types for Maya. You have Maya ASCII and Maya binary. I prefer the MA because it's a more stable file format. So I save everything as MA. So now what we want to do is create a new scene. Let's not save the changes. Import our weight FBX, and it's going to look a little funny when it's imported in. Well, a little funny is a bit of an understatement, to be completely honest. But this isn't actually a problem, because what we want to do, we actually want to delete this bone set. We don't need it. Since we're not animating with this is literally just a posing reference. We just want this. So now from here we can just save this as idle temp. Open up our T-pose, and then import that scene that we just saved into here. And there we go. There's the second Ganon. Here are all his polygons, slightly all renamed so that they're different from the base one. And yeah. So what I'm actually going to do with this, just to make it easier to distinguish our main model from this one, I'm actually going to give it a new texture. So right click upon selecting all the polygons, assign new material. I'll just give it a blend, and now we've just got a grey Ganondorf. That just makes it easier for us to see what the deal is. Right. So now, through here, we can go about adjusting the pose for this. It only needs to kind of roughly match. It doesn't need to be exact. Just need a like a general kind of fit. Right. Animators are like puppet masters. We are like craftsmen. We like to move everything about and make things look cool by moving stuff. We are an interesting breed. Line up there. Line the heads. Again, for the sake of this, you'll probably want to do it a bit more closely when you're animating your own stuff. But for the sake of this tutorial, I'll just do it kind of rough. Although, if I'm to be perfectly honest, I'm not very good at rough. Alright. Final thing is the fingers, which we control by clicking on these little arrows and then just adjusting them here. Now for the fingers, what you mainly want to be using, the fingers are generally kind of finicky. So for general like curling, what you want to do is you just want to select the FK joints here and just curl them all like this. If you want more precise curling, what you want to do is I'll show you guys in a sec once I approximately get this. Move the hand a bit. Slightly better in position. There we go. Yeah, for more precise curling, you select the FK joint, you place it where you want, and then you press down on your keypad, and that just helps you select the end bone on its own. It's much easier than trying to click that little tiny orb. And this just allows you to control the end joint a lot more easily. So that's a handy little tip for you. Other hand. That's the wrong hand. Yeah, that'll do. Alright, so as I said, it's not exact, but it's pretty much there. And now that we've posed him into his idle, we can delete all the temporary polygons. And there we go. That's pretty much Ganondorf's idle. Rotate his head a bit. Cool. Alright, so now that we have everything set up, there's some stuff here that we need to pay attention to. What these do, these little selection things, when you're keyframing stuff, keyframes for those who don't know are basically they're the frames that allow, they're the frames where stuff happens. It's where the major stuff happens, and they're what control the overall action for the animation. And what these do is these allow you to select certain sections of the body to just keyframe. So here, with this one selected, keyframing, which is done by pressing S, or if you're using auto keyframe with this little key, it just happens automatically when you change a keyframe or when you change a frame. Pressing S will keyframe the entire HumanIK rig. With this one, it only keyframes a selected body part. So for example, if I move Ganondorf's hand 5 frames later, and then key, if I select his body, it's not keyframed here. Only this hand is keyframed. And obviously we get that movement here. For the single bone, it's literally just the bone, as opposed to the entire sort of body part. Since this uses a lot of IK, you'll pretty much never use this. Primarily, you'll be sticking with body part and full body. If you're creating a major pose for a major action within the animation, you'll want to use the full body. And then if you're like refining transitions, you'll want to use your body part. This little button here basically just allows you to hide and show the skeleton. You don't really need that. This hides the FK joints. This hides the IK joints. These are very handy. these allow you to pin bones in place. By default, the feet are pinned to the ground. So if I try and move the hip, the feet will stay in place. If I remove these, or temporarily disable them by pressing this little button here, the release all pinning button, I can now just move him around in space like this without him being pinned to the ground. You can pin any bone. You can pin any major IK bone. You can't pin FK bones though. So like, I can pin where these circles are, but I cannot pin where these lines are. This does nothing. I try and pin them and I unselect and nothing's happened. So let's, for example, pin the hand here. Now if we move the body, the hand is pinned in place as well. This is helpful for it's helpful for various things actually. If your character's on the ground doing some kind of a crawl, you want to pin the hands. If they're grabbing another character, you want to have the hands pinned. Stuff like that. It's a very helpful tool for just basically making your workflow a bit more convenient. Finally, this little button here, you probably never need to use it. This puts him back into T-pose. So let's delete this keyframe. You just do right-click delete. And yeah. And I think that's pretty much it for this lesson, to be honest. I mean, what I really wanted to just focus on with this lesson was just kind of easing you guys into just how you get everything into Maya, how you get everything working. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them in the Twitch chat or the comments below. And I will see you guys next episode. Next lesson, we will start getting into the nitty-gritty of creating basic animations and understanding just the overall animation workflow. Thanks a bunch for watching, guys. See you guys next time.